Okay, so making a video on SEO and subdomains and how subdomains affect SEO. So to start this off, subdomains are a situation where there are multiple websites sharing one domain name. And the most frequent cause of this is a web store or a login service or an informational service. So you might have bobstools.com, which is one website, and it might share a second site on its domain that is stored at bobstools.com. Now, these are two separate websites, and the significance when it comes to SEO is when the sites are performing differently. Obviously, when you have different websites that are built, especially by different vendors, you have different levels of compliance with Google. So Google wants all pages to pass Lighthouse audits of 100%. This means you have proper core web vitals, they're mobile friendly, they have very good mobile web vitals, they're progressive web apps, so on and so forth. And the other thing this means is that you don't have many errors on these pages. So what often happens is you get a tale of two websites. You have one website that is beautiful and has perfect rankings and they've taken care of their errors. And you have a second website that hasn't, and they're not. And when this situation occurs, what ends up happening is you have one site dragging the other site down and one site dragging the other site up. So you have averages that are based on your mean Lighthouse audit score. And this is by the number of pages of your website. So if you have, let's say, bobstools.com has 3,000 pages, and let's say that store.bobstools.com has 40,000 pages. Now, the most frequent situation where this isn't a problem is when two different companies manage different pages. Like one is a vendor, maybe one is the main site that is managed in-house. Now, the situation where you can have a problem is where the vendor doesn't comply with SEO audits. Let's say they choose not to do edits to make the pages mobile friendly, or they choose not to do core web vitals, and you have a very poor performing score. Now, if you have a situation where you have 40,000 pages that are on this vendor site and these sites are poor performing, you can get a situation where your main pages that were ranking for years can be torn down and you can no longer rank for your own name. And this happens a lot because the structure of your website is important to your overall ranking. And part of the web structure part of SEO is how do your pages comply with, like, obviously the things I mentioned, or core web vitals, and how many pages have errors, so on and so forth. So when you go into Search Console, you can actually see which pages are throwing errors. And you can actually see that subdomains are included as part of the domain property, which can clue you in on the performance issue. Obviously, myself and a number of SEOs have discovered that when one is not performing, you will see a effect of position lowering and of slower initial rankings on the other domain. And conversely, you'll see a situation where the domain that shouldn't be ranking very well, because it's attached to a subdomain that is ranking well, will be dragged upward and perform better. And the situation typically is magnified if one has a significantly higher number of pages than the other. And so yeah, that's the gist of it. Now, the problem with solving this issue, and this is probably the toughest issue in all of SEO in my opinion, because there's not really something, if you don't have access to the subdomain, there's not anything you can do about it. You're just kind of screwed. So the only way to solve this problem is, well, I guess there's two. The first is that you get whatever vendor is causing the problems to comply with SEO. And if that happens, then you're pretty much out of the woods. Everything's great, right? Now, if that doesn't happen, the only other thing you could do is create such a tremendous number of pages on the main domain where the subdomain is no longer, they're in a minority of pages. You can bring up your average. Those are the two ways to solve this issue. And neither are good. Because I guess they can be good. If you have a situation where, let's say your subdomain's over like 500 pages, you can just add another 1,000 pages on your main site, and guess what? You've drug up the average. So it's just a tough situation, but it's interesting. So that's about it for today.